Om Shri Sai Ram, offering our humble, reverential, and prayerful salutations at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Lord, Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba. Sai Ram, dear brothers and sisters, it gives us immense pleasure to welcome you all to the next edition of our series of satsangs being conducted towards Swami's 96th birthday celebrations. The theme, as you're all aware, Jnatum, knowing Swami, Drashtum, seeing Swami, and Praveshtum, experiencing Swami. And when we talk about these three, knowing, seeing, and experiencing Swami, if we add a tinge of love or prem towards that, let us all get into that experiencing of a lovable, prem-filled experience of Jnatum, Drashtum, and Praveshtum. You would have seen the flyers, no suspense. Today, we are going to have amidst us a very familiar personality. For those of you who've been watching the satsangs, the videos, and those of you who are following the Radio Sai or Sri Satya Sai Media Center, Brother Prem Anosh. Brother Prem Anosh joined Bhagwan's University in the year 1999 at the Brindavan campus for BSc Chemistry. Followed that, he moved to the Prashantinilayam campus for MSc Chemistry, which he completed in the year 2004. I think Swami had ordained chemistry for Brother Prem because the chemistry with which he is going to share and the chemistry with which we are going to connect, you will definitely appreciate Swami's divine Leela in choosing him for BSc and MSc Chemistry. He has been in the Prashanti since his graduation, and he joined Radio Sai or the Satya Sai Media Center in July 2011. And at this moment, I would like to share a trivia. When I used to live in Saudi, in fact, Brother Prem Anosh's voice is something which was always guiding in the answering booth. And I don't know whether he will remember also. I've written to him many times and he gives response even without knowing, asking for the links or videos for satsang. He hosted a few live shows on Radio Sai and is part of the website and content team. And he is one among the regular speakers at the satsang hall in Prashantinilayam. So without much ado, I would request Brother Prem Anosh to share his views, thoughts, experiences on Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum. Om Shri Sai Ram, Brother Prem. You can unmute your video and audio.
I offer my most loving pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet. I pray to Swami that he gives us all the understanding that it is Swami who speaks, it is Swami who listens to each one of us. Elders, sisters, and brothers, Sai Ram to all of you. It gives congratulations for choosing such a wonderful theme. Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum is something that is very dear to Swami's heart, as I have come to understand, and it's wonderful that you've chosen this theme. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Yes, even before the program started, I think I heard the signature tune of the answering booth when your phone was ringing, so that itself made me glad. Before we go into the theme, I understand looking at Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum as knowing Swami, seeing Swami, and then eventually merging in Bhagwan, which is the fond ambition for each one of us. But in my limited reading about the Bhagavad Gita, the context in which these three themes occur in the Bhagavad Gita is pretty different. I wouldn't say it is completely different, but Swami gives it a different flavor. And I think it is through Swami's words that we can probably begin to understand what are these concepts as Krishna reveals them to Arjuna. So what is the context in the Bhagavad Gita, as most of the commentators who explain this shloka explain it to us? I'm sure most of you by now must be aware it comes in the 11th chapter when Krishna gives this beautiful Vishwarupa darshan. And it is not explained completely when you call it a darshan. It is an experience. It is a Vishwarupa experience that Arjuna has. So after having given him this amazing vision that Arjuna is not able to come to terms with, it's so phenomenal, it's so amazing. So he looks at this vision, and at the end of it, Krishna tries to impress upon Arjuna how phenomenal this particular vision is. Not everyone is blessed with this vision. It is not an ordinary experience that he's been given. So when he goes on to explain how the great sages and the great gods of the different lokas yearn for this, at the end of it he says, but Arjuna, this experience can be known, can be had, and you can become one with this experience through Ananya Bhakti. That is what he says. Jnatum, Drashtum, Tatvena Praveshtum. You can know it, or rather, the first few chapters leading up to this 11th chapter is where Krishna explains this Vishwarupa darshan, right? So he gives the knowledge about how he is the cosmic form. So the Jnatum aspect is still the 10th chapter. And in the 11th chapter, when Arjuna says, I would like to see this form, that is where he gets the experience of Drashtum. And then Krishna says, if you have Ananya Bhakti, you can also become one with this experience. Now, what does Swami say, and how is it slightly different, but in fact, much more profound and deep than what most of the commentators have explained the shloka to be? And I say this with the disclaimer that I don't claim to have read everything there is on this chapter or on this shloka. With the limited reading that I've done, I find that Swami's explanation is refreshingly different. Swami says Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum is not 3 separate experiences, but 3 steps in the spiritual journey. This is literally a process that we can use. A lot of people, when we interact with, in fact, many times when we have question answer session with devotees or on online satsangs, a question that often comes to us, a question that came to me even in one of the recent online satsangs is, it's wonderful when we participate in these kind of satsangs, when we listen to about Swami, when we listen all these beautiful stories that you all say, when we read Swami's literature. But then when the session ends and we go back to our lives, we find that, how do we reconcile? How do we make this experience last or make this experience count? Swami says the answer to that is this 3-step process of Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum. Swami also goes on to say that this is exactly what is also described in Vedanta as Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. So for the next few minutes, I want to speak about this process, right? Because it's very important. Whether we know it or we don't know it, having Swami in our life is like taking medication for the Bhavaroga, right? The disease of being inflicted with worldliness. And like any other medicine, as I was introduced, I'm from the chemistry background, so I might know a little bit of what is the chemistry in some medicines, but I don't need to know the chemistry of the medicine for me to benefit from it. So knowing Swami, loving Swami, as we're going to see probably towards the end of whatever I've put together to share with you, just the process of loving Swami will ensure that everything is taken care of, whether it's a 3-step process or it's a 9-step process or it's a 900-step process. It doesn't matter, because through love, you will be walked through every bit of that stage or all the stages in that journey. But if we are aware of what is this process, sometimes we can, I feel, cooperate with Swami a little more consciously, right? Because that is why Swami gives us discourses, and that's why Swami tries to address us and try to literally awaken our consciousness, isn't it? So that is why I just want to spend a little bit of time about this. What is this concept of Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum, which Swami speaks about, and how can we consciously try to live this? But where does bhakti come in all this? You talk about spirituality, it is about moksha, it is about sakshatkara, it is about becoming one with the Supreme. Bhakti seems to be a very emotional thing, right? You sing bhajans, you cry, you think of Swami and you remember him, or you do abhishekam, you do worship, you do archana. Where does bhakti fit in all of this? One may wonder, because bhakti is something that is directed towards an external entity called God, or whatever you would like to call him, divinity, Paramatma, whatever it is, or Swami. But when you talk about spirituality, we always think it is a process of self-discovery, right? You're trying to find out what is Atma Sakshatkar, that is why it is called. But Swami very beautifully and very simply says that, in spirituality, you do one of two things. Either you try to find out who you are, or you try to find out who is this object of your adoration, or who is this God. You try to find out, who am I? As Swami says, the journey starts with each one of us crying, Koham, Koham, Koham. Who am I? Who am I? Who is this Aham? Right? That's how the journey starts. And if you were to invest all your energies into that, that is the path of self-inquiry. And what does Swami say? That when you start asking, who is this Aham? The eventual answer that we come up to is, Aham Brahmasmi, the great Mahavakya. I am divine. And that is the ultimate understanding that we will come to. Or you say, okay, I'm not interested in this self-inquiry. I love Swami. I want to understand better Swami, or I would like to approach Swami, right? Understanding not in the sense of trying to scientifically understand Swami, but even this idea of trying to approach Swami is a means of understanding, right? You're trying to find out who is Swami, what he likes, how does he want me to lead my life. So either you try to find out Aham, or you try to find out who he is. And what is the process? The word that we use for God is Tat, right? Tat. That's why we say Om Tat Sat. That is one of the best ways to describe God. Om, because he is the primordial source of everything. Sat, because he is the unchanging truth. And Tat, because he cannot be defined in any categorization that we can think of. What do you call that? If you refer to something as that is a pronoun, right? A pronoun is something that you can apply to anything. It could be living, it could be non-living, it could be male, it could be female. So tat is a pronoun or a name that you use for anything when you remove name and form. That is why tat is a beautiful description of divine. So either you try to find out who am I, or you try to find out who is that? Tat. What is that tat? And the same Vedanta declares that in this process, what do you find out? You realize that tat tvamasi. That you're trying to find out is, after all, you. Tat tvamasi. That is the final understanding that you'll come to. So whether you're into the path of inquiry or you're into the path of devotion, the process may be different. It may be looking like you're going in two opposite directions, but it doesn't matter. The final consummation, or the final knowledge that you come to, is that either you are divine or that divinity is you. How is it same? Because the other Mahavakya, which says that this knowledge itself is God. Prajnanam Brahma. This knowing, this act of knowing, this experience of knowing itself is Brahma, right? So that is how this end and that end is unified by this process of knowing itself. So let us come to this Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum. What is this Jnatum? What is this act of knowing? We all have a certain philosophy of life, right? When we go about doing our life, living our life, we all have a certain approach to life. It could be a worldly approach, it could be a spiritual approach, or it could be a mix of worldly and spiritual. It could be an approach that is heavily influenced by science, right? Something like Scientology, or it could be an approach heavily influenced by some Oriental understanding. So each one of us have a philosophy in life. And this philosophy is partly comes from our conscious mind, and a major part of it comes from our unconscious mind, right? Or subconscious mind. That's more accurate way of putting it. And the subconscious mind is from where your vasanas and sanskaras from the many, many lifetimes that we have lived come. And for most part, you cannot directly deal with what is there in the subconscious mind. But what is in the subconscious mind can be dealt with pretty easily. So we all have this approach to life, a philosophy to life, the way we deal with everyday understandings and everyday happenings, right? The beautiful thing with Vedanta compared to many other schools of philosophy is that Vedanta is very open, right? The Sanatan Dharma schools of philosophy are so open that it says that every philosophy is valid. Whatever is your philosophy, it is valid. The most materialistic philosophy that you can find in Sanatan Dharma is a philosophy called Charvarka, right? Even as I'm telling all this, I'm telling it with the disclaimer that I'm sure that many of you may know many of these concepts, would have heard many of these things in Swami's discourses. You might even be a little disappointed that I'm not telling anything new. If it is so, please consider this as a mere reminder to each one of us. As much as I need this reminder, I believe that each one of you also might require this reminder. So if you feel it is all a repetition of what you've already read, heard, just consider this as an hour where we are revising some of these spiritual concepts. So the Charvarka philosophy is absolutely materialistic. It says that who knows whether heaven is there or not? Who knows if there is sin or papa or punya, demerit or sin? Who knows if somebody is keeping a track record? So that is supposed to be the most materialistic form of spiritual approach or approach to life. And Sanatan Dharma says, all right, if that's a philosophy of life, that's a philosophy of life. And they say that that is also included in our understanding. Very interestingly, Charvarka philosophy is characterized by this line or by this catchphrase. It goes something like, borrow money and drink ghee, right? It sounds a bit weird, given how very sensitive we are all about putting on weight. But the idea is, if you have to borrow money and enjoy life, borrow money and enjoy life. And now it seems like it is not a very distant philosophy of life, isn't it? We all, to a great extent, seem to be following Charvarka philosophy. We use swipe our credit cards to enjoy life. We use everything possible from EMIs to home loans and everything so that we can enjoy our future earnings in the present. That's precisely the Charvarka philosophy. So the school of Charvarka seems to have dematerialized, so to say, but the philosophy still lives on in our lives. So the point is, when we come to a guru, when we come to a spiritual master, or when we come to Swami, we all have our own idea of what is life, how life has to be led. But when we come to the master, we open our minds for his words to now reform our philosophy of life. We are now saying, Swami, now I am giving you my attention so that your words can now begin to mold my philosophy of life. As I said, A good part of our philosophy comes from our subconscious mind that we really don't have access to, but we can at least offer our conscious mind to Swami. And that is what we do when we listen to Swami's discourses, when we read Swami's books, when we attend satsangs. Right now, you're doing that. You're opening your mind to me through my words, isn't it? So you have a certain philosophy in life, and for the next few minutes, you're allowing me to, through my words, influence your philosophy of life, maybe to modify it or maybe to strengthen certain aspects of that idea of life that you have. So that is what is Jnatum. Jnatum is to know. And how do you know? You know by gathering knowledge from outside, isn't it? Either by seeing, by reading. That is why Swami says the process of Jnatum is very, very close to this other term that is used, which is Shravanam, right? Shravanam is listening. So how does this first stage of Jnatum, how do you enter into this first stage of Jnatum? It is through the process of Shravanam. And that is why satsangs are so important. That is why reading Sai literature or spiritual literature is so important. That is why it is so important to spend time in trying to modify our philosophy of life, our understanding of how we should go about leading life. For this Shravanam, what is necessary? Now we have figured out the first step in the spiritual journey is Shravanam. So what am I supposed to do to ensure that this Shravanam happens? This Shravanam has in its core the need for faith. Shraddha is the most important for Shravanam. If you don't have faith, you will not listen. Why will you listen to somebody whose words you don't trust? Why will you give your mind space or you open your mind to someone in whose ideas you're not too sure of, or you have you're circumspect about their intentions, right? That is why Swami would often again quote another phrase from the Bhagavad Gita itself, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. For this process of Jnatum to begin, you should first have faith in Swami's words, right? So that is the first stage. I have an understanding. I am not too sure about what I know. I come to Swami. Now I am opening myself to allow Swami's words and Swami's philosophy to modify my philosophy. If you don't do this, then the bhakti will remain in the state of we merely worshipping someone whom we feel has a lot of influence over our life, right? That is not a spiritual journey really in the sense, or you're in that very, very primitive state of merely preparing your mind. As Swami would say, that is samanya bhakti, right? It's a state where you're merely purifying your mind, you're merely purifying your inner instruments, the antakaranas, and you're steadying your mind. You're in that state where, if you probably join the army or something, there is a preliminary drill that they do. It's not given to, it is given to the person who's just entered the army and who's just ready to take the whole journey. But if we want to begin this journey of Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum, you and I must open our minds to Swami's philosophy, and we should allow Swami to influence our thinking, right? That's the most important thing. Before we come to Swami, we may have a worldview, we may have a view of life, but after we come to Swami, that must change. If it has not changed, if you're able to look back at your life and you say that, oh, I've not really changed much, or my thinking has not really changed, or my approach to life has not changed, then I think seriously we need to look at ourselves and say how much we are allowing Swami to influence our life. But is that enough? Right? I've heard a lot of discourses, I've heard a lot of satsangs, I've read a lot of books. Is that enough? That is why the next stage of Drashtum is very important. And this is why it's important to look at Drashtum in this way that Swami says. And the example, I'm sure by now that example must have been given to you whenever Swami speaks about Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum, the example of the mangoes, right? Swami would say Jnatum is like being informed that fresh, tasty mangoes have come in the market. Merely having that knowledge is of no use to you and me. Having gained the knowledge, you now have to go to the market and see the mangoes for yourself. And Swami would say that that is the process of Drashtum, and Praveshtum, of course, is then you finally eat the mangoes. So Drashtum is not merely having the darshan of Swami, right? Drashtum is not merely seeing that Vishwarupa darshan as Arjuna saw it. Drashtum is literally to try it out, right? To try out this new knowledge that you've gained from the master, from the spiritual words of the guru in your everyday life. That is what Drashtum is. Literally, if I have to translate it into English, it is try it for yourself and see. That's why it is Drashtum, right? And the stage that is, or the other term that is used to describe the stage, just like how Shravanam was used to describe Jnatum, Drashtum is described by Mananam, which means I have heard the master's words, I have read the spiritual discourse. In that stage, the knowledge is outside and I am allowing it to enter me. The next stage is where I use this knowledge. I have the knowledge in my mind, and now I start ruminating over that knowledge in different circumstances of life that I am in. Without this process of mananam, the knowledge will remain in the Satya Sai Speaks, the knowledge will remain in the Vahinis or within Zoom calls like this that we do. We will not be able to take it into our life. That's why Swami says the best example for this is an animal like the cow. When you take it to the pastures, it'll go and it'll eat as much as it can. It'll chew up as much of green grass as it can. And finally, it goes to a corner and sits down, and when it has all its time, it sits and starts chewing whatever it has already swallowed. And this process of mananam is what we have to do to constantly at different stages in life. When we are put under different circumstances, whatever we learn, whatever we read has to be practiced. One Swami was telling about this devotee who had come to Swami asking for, as always, we all have problems in our life, and came to Swami. And this person was a businessman. He was extremely busy. He had pressure at work. He had pressure at home. So he came to Swami, and Swami asked him, why do you look so stressed all the time? Whenever you come, I feel that you're very tired and you're looking too stressed out. So he said, Swami, I'm a businessman. I have a lot of problems, and I'm really struggling to keep myself together. So Swami said, all right, I understand your problem. Don't worry. I will give you certain things to follow. I don't know what exactly Swami said. Maybe Swami gave him some sadhana. Maybe Swami gave him some mantra to think over. So Swami said, I'm going to give you these things. You have to ruminate over them. You have to do it like a discipline, right? You do it in the morning, you do it in the afternoon, you do it in the night, or whatever was the instruction Swami gave. Swami gave it to him, and Swami said, you will find that your stress and your problems will come down if you do this. So the devotee was very happy. He goes back, and then after a few months, he comes back to a regular visit for Swami's darshan. And very eagerly, Swami calls, these are all Swami's words, how he had described the whole episode. Swami calls this devotee into the interview room, and Swami says, how are you now? You should be doing better now. Your problems should be much lesser now. So are you all right? Swami asks him. And this devotee says, no, Swami, I'm still having the same problem and all of that. And Swami says, that's impossible. If you had followed what I had told you, you cannot come back to me and say that you still have those same problems. Then Swami looks at him sternly and says, did you follow what I told you to follow? And then this man says, no, Swami, I told you I'm a businessman. I'm extremely busy. I'm traveling all over the time. I mean, all the time, I didn't have time to follow what Swami told me to follow. Then Swami looks at him and Swami asks, in this few months that you were away, did you ever stop eating? Did you ever miss your breakfast? Did you ever miss your lunch or your dinner or your coffee, tea in between? And this devotee didn't have anything to say. He just put his head down and he said, no, Swami, I didn't miss. Then Swami says, after all, for this body which is going to perish, you feed it 3 times a day. Why are you not seeing the necessity to feed this soul of yours, this Atman of yours, or this mind of yours, whatever it is? Swami says, is it not necessary to feed it? And then Swami said something very beautiful. He said, you come to me for a problem. I give you a solution. If you don't have time for the solution, how can you expect the problem to be resolved? What simple but profound and straight words. We all have come to Swami with our problems, and Swami is all the time giving us solutions. If we don't have time for the solution, we have no right to complain about the problem, isn't it? So this process of mananam or drashtum is, Swami has given me the message, and now Swami is giving me various situations in life where I can literally try out this message, right? And this is the most important part for you and me, because this is the part where we can practically try out Swami's message. You know, when we were in school, I'm sure most of you would have had this experience, when the teacher has to leave the classroom for a while. And we all know that you cannot leave a bunch of 30, 40 students at that teenage, pre-teens or mid-teens all alone. So what will the teacher do? She will pick up one of the students in the class and she will tell the student a very interesting usage of words. She will say, mind the class when I am away. And she would make this boy or a girl as a leader of the class for that moment, right? And the word that is used is mind the class. It's a very interesting thing that she's doing. There is a bunch of students who can become unruly. So she picks one of the students themselves and makes them mind the class. Now, for the problem that you and I have is this mind, right? It's the mind that drags us all over the place. So can we find a way by which we can mind the mind? And how can we do that? You have to appoint somebody in the mind itself, just like how she appointed a student in the class itself. You have to appoint somebody in the mind itself to mind the mind. And that entity that you pick up, Swami says, is buddhi, right? And this buddhi should be constantly fed by these messages of Swami, by these satsangs, by these various ways by which we gather knowledge. From the Jnatum, how do we transition to this Drashtum? It is through this process of constantly asking ourselves. The mind needs to take up that role and start doing this process. That is why if you see all our bhajans, a lot of our bhajans are addressed to our mind. Manasa bhajare Guru Charanam. Manuva bholo radhe radhe. You are asking the mind to do it. It is like the mind telling the mind to do something. The other classic example that Swami would often give is when Saint Tyagaraja is presented with the temptation of the king coming and telling you, come and sing in my court. What does he say? Nidhi chala sukhama, Ramuni sannidhi seva sukhama. And the third line is the beautiful one. He says, Nijamuka paluku manasa. He's literally talking to his own mind, because the mind knows. The mind that has accepted this change in approach to life from the Guru, the mind is already saturated with that knowledge. So he says, he asks the mind, you tell me, mind, is this plate of jewelry and gold that has come from the Lord, from the king, is that more precious? Nidhi chala sukhama, Ramuni sannidhi seva sukhama. You tell me. And of course, the mind tells him that there is nothing comparable to the service of the Lord, right? So that's precisely what we're trying to do in the stage of mananam. So this drashtum is the stage where we are trying to merge this gap between me, my thinking, my understanding, and Swami's words. There's a very beautiful Chinnakatha that Swami says, and I'm very fond of quoting. Swami would say that one day Arjuna asks Krishna this question: Krishna, you have many devotees. What do you expect from your devotees, and how does one become a devotee who is dear to you? Right? That's the question that Arjuna asks Krishna. So Krishna gives him a very graphic explanation. What does he do? He first takes a stone which is in the river, right? They're walking by the river, so he bends down and he picks up a small stone that is actually submerged in the water, and he gives it to Arjuna and tells Arjuna, you break the stone. So Arjuna breaks open this small stone or a pebble or whatever it is, and then Krishna says, look at the stone. The stone is in the water for so many years, but when you break it open, you find that the inside is still dry. Then Krishna said, this is one form of devotee, and this is the lowest form, which I don't consider as being dear to me. Then he bends down again and he dips his cloth, his pitambar, into the water, and he pulls it out, and he says, this is the next higher state of a devotee, where when you dip this devotee in satsang, like each one of us, we just absorb all the knowledge and absorb all the love of Swami and all of that, we take it in. But then Krishna says that you put this cloth in the sun, then everything evaporates. You put this devotee among the worldly people, then everything evaporates. Right? So he says that is the second form. The third form, he says, is he waves his hand, he materializes a small sugar candy, and he drops it into the water. And he says, this is the best form of a devotee who wets the outer surface, who takes the water inside, and then dissolves himself or herself completely. That is the state of Praveshtum, right? And this will happen only when, at every stage in life, we try as much as possible to lead our life the way Swami would want us to. At every point, what would Swami want me to do? How would Swami want me to speak? How would Swami ask me to react in a situation like this? That is the question that must literally obsess our minds, right? There was this episode that happened in Thrai Vrindavan once, and when Swami was talking about dharma and how dharma is very important. You must stick to morality and dharma at any cost, whatever be the loss that might come your way and all of that. So Swami was addressing the students. In the audience was also a very senior devotee of Swami, who happened to be a man from the army. So he looked at Swami and he said, Swami, all this is fine, but it is not always possible to follow all this in the outside world. Swami was like, why do you say that? I mean, it's a pretty preposterous thing to say right straight to Swami, right? Here is Swami, the master of the universe, the one who has created everything. And he is telling that this is how you have to do things. And he says, Swami, it doesn't work, right? That's how absurd we all are. That man was absurd enough to say it, but we are all absurd enough to live our lives that way. That's the whole problem, right? So this man said this to Swami and said, why do you say that? So he said, for example, Swami, in the army, I just have to follow orders. I have no right to say, I won't do anything if my superior tells me to. So Swami says, yeah, that is fine. But still, if it is not right, if your conscience doesn't permit you to, you should not do it. And Swami says, no, Swami, I can't do that. Then Swami asks him, what will happen if you disobey the command of a superior? He said, Swami, I'll get court-martialed. I'll get pulled up for insubordination. And Swami said, okay, then what will happen? He said, Swami, I'll lose my job. Okay, you lose your job, then what will happen? He said, Swami, I'll come to the street. I will not be able to take up another job because of the loss of my name and all of that. I'll come to the streets. And Swami said, okay, if you come to the streets, what will happen? And he said, Swami, my family will suffer. Then Swami said, is that all the faith that you have? When Swami says, Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitaha, when Swami says, I will take care of you if you follow me, if you live your life the way I ask you to live, is that all faith that you have? that this is how things will end up? Because we literally don't try. That Drashtum is that. You literally go out and try living Swami's message. Yes, there will be ups and downs. Yes, there will be sometimes you have to step back, but at least we must go out and try. If Prem before he came to Swami is the same as Prem after he came to Swami, what is the point in coming to Swami at all, isn't it? There was this friend of mine who works for a multinational company, an Indian company. It's a huge industry in India. So he's been working for that company for quite some time. So he was telling that his CEO used to come and address them, talk to them about the philosophy of the company and all of that. So he was a very, very aggressive industrialist. He used to come and tell them that, we have to drive our sales and we have to market heavily and we have to make more profit, and shareholders are asking us questions and all of these things. So a typical corporate aggressive meeting is what this boy would witness whenever this CEO would come and talk. Eventually, the CEO became a devotee of Swami, and being a very sincere person that he is, he literally opened up himself to Swami's message. So this boy worked with that company for a good period, I think maybe 10 or 20 years. So he actually saw that gradual change in the language of this CEO in all those shareholder meetings. And in that,
Brother Prem, you can continue. We have 4 minutes more. Sai.
Okay, right. So he was telling that this person, he saw that gradual change in the way he approached life. So much so that by the time this person, this friend of mine was actually leaving that company, this person's meetings with the employees would be like a satsang. He would come and say, we should understand that our customers are our God and we should serve them. God has given us an opportunity to serve the society through the small work that we are doing. We should do the best we can, because whatever we are doing, we're offering it to our God, right? So that is the change in that idea that he has brought in and he should bring in. So this whole process of Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum, where I completely cease to exist, me, my philosophy, my understanding, my thinking completely ceases to exist, Swami says, is possible through the process of Ananya Bhakti, right? So I really don't have enough time to go into Ananya Bhakti and what is Ananya, as Swami says. I will just very briefly, not taking more than a few minutes, tell you what Swami means when he says Ananya Bhakti. Swami says 3 things. What is Ananya? The word Anya means the other. So Ananya means not the other, right? So the first thing Swami says is, to develop devotion, you have to look at God and feel he is not somebody else, he is mine. The idea that he is my Swami is what will lead to true bhakti, right? So Swami would oftentimes when you're talking with Swami, and suppose you're going to the hospital for a treatment or something, Swami will come and ask you, hey, I didn't see you in the morning, where were you? So if you tell Swami, I went to your hospital to get this treatment, or Swami, I'm getting a treatment done in your hospital, Swami will get so upset. Swami will say, hey, మీ హాస్పిటల్ ఎందుకు చెప్తున్నావు, మన హాస్పిటల్ అని చెప్పు. Swami will say, why do you say your hospital, Swami? You should say, Swami, I went to our hospital, right? So Swami would say that feeling of mindness is what leads to that mamatvam, is what leads to mamata or love. So that is that Ananya Bhakti that Swami speaks about. You don't think of God as another. Swami would give this example. Suppose you're there is some spill in your room, right? Or there is some small work in your house. You call the worker in the house and you ask him to clean it. If it's an extra work, that person will expect you to give something extra, right? If our relationship with Swami is like that, every time we do some seva, every time we do something for Swami in the organization, if we expect that we should be rewarded for that, Swami will reward, but then that will be the relationship between you and Swami. But if there is a spill in your house, I will not wait for somebody else to come and clean it, or I will not clean it and ask my mother to pay me for that, because I have the feeling that this is my house. So Swami says, if your relationship with Swami is like that, then God will not pay you every time, but whatever is God's belongs to you. You become the inheritor of everything, right? So Swami says that is that Ananya Bhakti. The second explanation that Swami gives about Ananya Bhakti is there is no other than the Lord, right? When you, I'm sorry, when we talk about Jnatum, when you're opening your mind to the Lord, it is so helpful when you say that, Swami, you are my master and you alone are my master. Otherwise, it becomes so very difficult if you open your mind to all the other things that you hear. It is not that somebody is wrong or somebody is bad or something is, they're telling you something that is not right. But if we keep opening our mind to everything and anything that we read and hear, that process of Jnatum, Drashtum, Praveshtum just gets derailed or delayed a little bit. And that's why that Ananya Bhakti or one-pointed attention to Swami helps. And finally, the true Ananya that Swami speaks about is, there is no other than you. Wherever I look, it is only you. Whoever I see, it is only you. I don't have any other relationship other than you. The Ananya, which Swami says, is the Lord sees nothing but, the devotee sees nothing but the Lord. That is why there's that other very, very beautiful shloka in the Gita, in the 6th chapter, where Krishna says, Yomam pashyati sarvatra, sarvam cha mayi pashyati, tasyaham na pranashyami, sachame na pranashyati. The one who sees me and me alone everywhere, that devotee is not separate from me, and I am not separate from that devotee. And that is that stage where you reach that Praveshtum, where there is no you at all. And this whole process, Swami says, especially in the Kali Yuga, is so much more easy, right? So much more easy through Ananya Bhakti. Swami tells in one of the discourses, Parikshit goes to Sukha Maharishi. Sukha Maharishi is this great saint, great sage, who, as soon as he was born, he went off to the forest. He renounced everything and went to the forest. Parikshit goes to Sukha Maharishi and says, you tell me what I should do. He gives him the Bhagavatam. And when Sukha Maharishi starts speaking about the Gopikas, he starts crying. Swami says, why is he crying? Because the Gopikas are the highest stage a spiritual aspirant can reach, and they represent Ananya Bhakti. When Krishna sends Uddhava to the Gopikas and tells, oh, you want to try to teach them Advaita? Go ahead, try to teach them. And what do the Gopikas tell Uddhava? He says, dear sir, we have only one mind, and that mind we have given it to Krishna. With what mind can we listen to your discourse? That is the Ananya Bhakti that they had. They had only one mind, and that one mind was completely given to Swami. So this is the process that Swami is allowing each one of us to take part in. By developing that feeling of love, you open your mind for Swami's word to come and influence it. As you go through life, what does Swami like? How will Swami like me to live? How would Swami like me to speak? That desperation of a devotee trying to please the Lord with the process of Drashtum. And when that Praveshtum happens, you and I will not know, because it will be so very seamless. So praying to Swami that he allows us to experience him in all these stages. Step by step, he leads us to himself. I most humbly offer this at Bhagwan's lotus feet. I thank each one of you for your very, very patient listening. And I wish each one of you the very best in this wonderful journey. Thank you. Sai Ram.
Thank you, Brother Prem Anush, for that wonderful satsang. It was very refreshing and very unique approach to address this subject. Quickly, I will brief the key aspects of your sharing today. I think what was most appealing today was the perspective given about the conscious and the subconscious mind. And that while the subconscious mind has been framed its philosophy over lifetimes, at least by associating with Swami's words and his philosophies, we can quietly mold our thinking and our philosophy and our actions. And for that, you said one of the key elements, Shraddhavan Labhate Jnanam. We have to have faith when we are listening to his words, to allow his words to mold our philosophy. That was very beautiful aspect that you highlighted. And you also highlighted the aspect of Drashtum, seeing, and for that we need to try out and see his philosophy. You gave the two examples of, if you don't have time for the solution to be implemented, how can we expect the problem to be solved? And the aspect of minding the class, where we use our buddhi to mind our mind. That was a very beautiful perspective. And lastly, you ended it with the Ananya Bhakti aspects, three aspects. That is, he and I are one, he is not another. And then the second aspect of having concentrated focus and attention on the task, that is Ananya Bhakti. And the third aspect is, there is no one else but him. For the one who sees Lord in everything and everyone, the Lord is never away from him, the devotee is never away from the Lord. And you finally gave us the example of Sage Sukha, who, while noticing Gopikas, found out that the Gopika had just one mind, and that mind was given in full and total surrender to Krishna. That is the stage we have to aspire to reach. Thank you very much. Excellent and wonderful, unique approach. It is not a revision, it is a new philosophy that we have learned, and we are extremely grateful to you for that. Thank you, Brother Pranam.